Alright, hi folks. Today I've got a little bit of a niche video for the production sound community. To introduce myself, my name is Silas. I am a production sound mixer local to Chicago, and I have been using the Audio Limited A10 wireless system for a little while, and I thought that I would give a little bit of a menu system overview of this wireless system, because not a lot exists online, and I figured I'd just take you guys through the menus of these systems, because while it is very straightforward and very well designed, I think there's always room for some educational content on these things, especially if you're new to the production sound world or in any way interested in buying these systems and just want to see kind of what they are made of. So let's get right into it. We're going to start off with the dual channel receiver. This is a slot receiver that takes two transmitters, and I apologize about the noise. I am sitting right next to my apartment window, so yeah, I apologize about that. Anyway, dual channel receiver. The way that these operate is actually very simple. They have a 3-button system on the front. The screen does go to sleep when you're not using it, and then to get into the menu system, you just hit the center button, and then you're in the menus. And then the only other 2 buttons on the system are these left and right arrows, and then the center button acts as a selection. So, what you're looking at when you first start up the unit, I'm actually going to power off this transmitter that's on, so you guys can kind of get a sense for what it looks like when you first power it up. As soon as this battery telemetry goes away. Yep, so you've got an indicator LED on either side. These correlate to each receiver that is inside of this dual slot unit. And the blue LED on top is a power indicator for the receiver unit itself. The red LED below that is a signal integrity LED. So when it's red, it means it's completely not connected. When there's a good signal, it will turn green. And then it also will fluctuate brightness based on the signal integrity itself. And then if you ever see this LED off, that means that the digital transmission has cut out the signal, so it's not transmitting audio, but it can still kind of sense that the transmitter is in existence. So you're basically, if this is off, you're far enough away that you're not receiving an audio signal, but you're not far enough away that you've completely dropped out the signal entirely. So when this turns red, your signal is gone entirely. And then there's a third LED under there that's not on right now. That's kind of a different status LED. It will flash to indicate RF overload. So if you put the transmitter antenna on high enough RF power directly next to the receiver antenna, it'll overload the receiver and it'll flash red below that. It also has the ability to tell you if your microphone signal is connected. So if you have an RF signal here, and then it detects that your audio signal is interrupted at the transmitter level, it will sometimes flash down here to indicate that like you've unplugged a microphone, and typically that's because you overload the like when this is on and transmitting and you unplug the microphone cable, you overload the preamplifier inside of the transmitter, and so that can indicate a transmitter overload here as well. So that's kind of the status of these, and then moving on to the transmitters. When you power them on, they have some status LEDs up top. Again, the blue LED is a power status indicator, and then the next LED over here is the mute status indicator. So if this is red, that means the system is muted. So if you're ever like, why is it connected but I'm not getting signal, just take a look at the transmitter. Sometimes Talent will bump these when they're wearing them, and then it'll trigger the mute. You can also lock the menu system, which I will show you later. So that's kind of the transmitter and receiver side. And now that I've turned this on and it's connected over here, you can see this LED has turned green. So I'm going to turn this back off. And then we're just going to start on the receiver end. So once again, I'll show you the different kind of... Actually, I will turn this back on so I can kind of show you what we're looking at here. So you'll see that your antenna status has popped up here, your antenna fidelity meter up top. You have your battery telemetry right here. And then right under this, in the new firmware, you have what they call a Q meter or a quality meter. So regardless of what your antenna strength is, it'll read out the quality of your audio transmission. So you might, in some circumstances, if your talent walks far enough away, you might see one of these antennas drop, or you might see your overall antenna strength kind of weaken, but you're still transmitting because it's digital. You're still receiving a good audio signal. So you can see this kind of dropped 1 point just now. It's because the antenna for the transmitter is right here. It is on low RF power. It's currently at 10 milliwatts, but it's still so close, and it's also in a weird kind of orientation, so the Q meter might not be 100% perfect. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. You'll also see a duplicate of that over here. So it'll show you see in the top right there, you see channel 1 and then channel 2. It'll show you the same info over here when this is working. And you see you have your TV channel and sub-channel for your frequency. You also have the regions indicator at the front. So you have X, Y, or Z regions, and those correlate to different types of frequency ranges and TV channel sets that you can use. So they change what TV channels actually operate like. I just have mine set to Z. I will be totally honest, I don't fully 100% understand what the X, Y, and Z correlate to regions. All I know is they do change. So if I put this in the X region, channel 23.4 will be a different frequency in X versus Y versus Z, even though it's the same TV channel. I think, I won't even try to guess exactly what that entails, but I know that this will correlate to a different actual megahertz frequency in the different regions. So let's get started in the different top layer views. So this is your dual channel view. This is probably what you'll be looking at the most. And then if you press the over button, you'll get into your single channel receiver view. So right now we're looking at channel 2. This basically just expands on this half screen here, so you get a little bit more information, and then under here you get the exact frequency number as well as the TV channels. You get your gain setting, this is your output setting. So we're at line level 14 dBu output. You have your Q meter. You have you'll have a bigger audio meter down there. Your antenna fidelity and everything here, and then what you see here on this next screen when you press the over button is your transmitter information. So this will show you if you have a low cut on, it'll show you what your transmitter gain is set to. It'll show you the serial number of your transmitter. All of that good stuff will be on the transmitter single view. And again, this is for channel 2. And then we'll go over 1. And then now we're at the transmitter view of channel 1, which is connected to this guy right here. So you have your serial number up here. You have your gain setting here, your low cut roll off, all there. And then when we go over here, you see your bigger single view receiver window here. So you can see it's on an AF mute because there's no microphone plugged in. You have some battery telemetry here. Again, your TV channel and frequencies, your transmitter serial number, antenna, Q meter, line level output there. And then we'll come back to our overview here. All right, so diving into the menu system here, what you'll want to make sure that you notice is that when you dive into the menus, it only adjusts settings based on which receiver you're currently editing. So right now I'm working on receiver 1, but if I go over on the top layer and then come back in, you'll see I'm changing settings for receiver 2. So let's go back to receiver 1, and when you're in the dual view system, it will default to receiver 1. So the first setting you have, press the wrong buttons here. So the first setting you'll have here is your frequency. So the way they break this down is TV channel, sub channel, and then you can more finely tune it. So if you click, what you'll see here is if you click on your over arrows, you'll see it highlight. So back will take us back. And then we'll get our TV channel. So when you're selected here, you want to hit the center button to select your frequencies. It'll change an arrow down there. And then you can use the back and forward arrow to change your your primary TV channel, and then you can hit center to select, and then you can come over your sub channel, click center button, and then you can change your sub channel. As you can see, it'll bump your frequency in 400 kilohertz steps. So then you can hit center to select, or you can come over to tune, and then it'll move your frequency in 25 kilohertz steps. And then we can come back out when we select a frequency. The next option we have is outputs. You can change your max level, which will select if you're using a lower mic level input, a higher mic level input, a lower line level input, or higher line level output. So I usually just do a high line level. You can change the audio polarity. You can change the mode, analog or AES, because this will output an AES signal if you're using an 8 series sound devices mixer or any other device that supports an AES digital input. I record on a Zoom F8N, so I use analog. And then you can also send a test tone. So this is again specific to channel 1. Your test tone will come out at -18, so you can select that and then it'll output a test tone. That way you can kind of see where your levels will ride, and then also you can see which cable you'll need to use. And the next thing we'll talk about is how to scan for frequencies. So right after outputs is your scan. It has a couple options for what area of the spectrum you can scan. You can do the full spectrum, 470 to 607, and then it has a couple of other options of smaller areas of spectrum for you to scan. You can also set up user groups in Sound Devices Utility. I haven't done that, so I have none here. I will typically scan in the 470 to 495, just because in Chicago it tends to be relatively clean in that area, so I just do that little block there. When you hit number 1, it'll go ahead and automatically scan, and it can detect the transmitter that I have on this frequency here. When you go ahead and hit number 1, it will scan that area of spectrum, and this is just reading out what types of things we have in this area of spectrum. And as you can see on the top of the screen, you have a couple options to use. So you'll see you have a double backwards arrow, a single backwards arrow, a set, a single forwards arrow, and a double forwards arrow. So the double arrows will have it automatically scan in that direction, and as soon as you move which arrow you're using, it'll stop. So if I come back over here and select the forward arrow, it'll start from the beginning to scan through here, and then the single arrows will scan by half sub-channel steps. So if you see there's like 2316 asterisk, that's like halfway between 2316 and 17, and then there's 2316. This might be 20, if I can read that, it's 2216, and then see 2215 halfway between 15 and 16, and then you just can move this around until you find a clean area of spectrum, and then come into the middle and hit set, and then it'll set receiver 1 to that frequency. So now when we come back here, we're on 2210, which is our area of clean spectrum. So now that we have that set, I'll just leave this for now and we'll come back to the transmitters in a minute, but that is how you scan frequencies on the A10 receiver when you need to find a clean area of spectrum. So go back into our settings, that's our scan. Our next thing is privacy. This is digital encryption. So on your transmission signals, you can encrypt these so that people can't intercept your signal. I don't claim to be an expert on digital encryption. I know this is AES 256 encryption, and this is where you can set a encryption key. You can have it be on or off, and then if you select on, it'll take you down here, and you can set your key. So I'm just going to go back. And then you have your settings window. This is where you get into some pretty good magic inside the system. So your first thing in your settings window is modulation. It has settings for standard and long range modulation, so you can more finely tune if you're going to be just operating at standard distances, or if you're really going to need to stretch your range. It has different ways to modulate how it receives the signal. Your next thing is user groups. This is where if you have this connected to Sound Device's utility, it would let you select user groups that you have loaded onto this receiver, and I currently have none. The next thing is TV channel map. So this is what I was talking about the regions. So you can choose region X, Y, or Z. I have mine on region Z, which, and again, I stated I don't 100% understand how these regions work. All I know is that the TV channels will correlate to different frequencies in different regions, so you have to make sure that your region is set the same on your receiver and on your transmitter, because if you set the TV channels to the same thing but they're in different regions, they will not match in terms of frequencies, therefore they will not connect to each other. So your next thing is your display. So you have settings to change the brightness. You have 5 steps of brightness that you can use. You have your screensaver. You can kind of tell it when you want it to automatically dim. I have mine set to 30 seconds. The next thing you have is your orientation. So because this is a slot receiver, you can also put different backplates on it. Right now this has the XLR backplate on it, which has a built-in 2 XLR cables that come off of it, as well as a Hirose cable to plug it into power. This can also come off to have a more typical, if my camera would focus, it can come off to have like a more typical super slot receiver that goes on there. And so if you slot it into a super slot, typically this side is facing up. The screen is I'm sure you can see it's curved up away from the body of the unit. So sitting flat on a table like this, it's easy for a camera above it to see the screen. But if you have it sitting in a bag, typically you'll want the screen to be angled facing you, so you can set your orientation to be flipped. And then if you turn the unit over, it'll look more normal. And it also flips the direction the buttons go, so that everything works in the same direction. So, and then your next option is more options. You can set it to prioritize TV channel or frequency. I like TV channels. It's kind of just simpler numbers that can just be set, and you can tell your boom operator or whoever, or your utility, just be like, hey, set it to 2315 instead of having to call like 485 272. Like less numbers to remember if you're calling out frequencies on set. So you can just set it to prioritize which one you want it to use. Your last thing in here is your Q meter. You can set it to either be small or large in your display. I set it to small just because I like to be able to see my antenna fidelity as well as my Q meter sort of equally. So I leave it to small. Then when we go back to our settings menu on the surface of the device, we have options for LEDs. You can either set them to be on or off. If you're like, I don't really want to see them, you can turn them off. Or you can leave them on, because I find the LEDs to be helpful to have on and be able to display some telemetry data. And then the very last thing at the back, the other good thing to note is if you're all the way at one side of the menu and you want to get all the way over, just push the button to go beyond and it'll cycle backwards to the end of the menu. So it's much easier than having to just like mash the buttons all the way through the end. And then the very last thing is you have your system settings. So you can click on those. You have your power options. The receivers are different circuit boards inside of this unit, so you can toggle them on and off separately. So if I go 1, I can leave receiver 1 on, turn receiver 2 off. So if I'm only using one transmitter, I can just save a little bit of battery power by turning off the second receiver. The second option is all on, so both receivers are on. Third option is 1 off, 2 on. This also works if you have talent going on and off screen. You can just power this off while they're off screen and then turn it back on when they come back. This process is a little far in the menus, so I typically don't recommend this, but if you have an actor just going on a break, you can just wipe out this channel, save you a little bit of battery, or this is how you turn the whole unit off. So we're going to do that, and then to actually show you, probably what we should have shown you at the start, is from off, you do have to press and hold this center button for a while. It'll say standby mode, hold center button to power on. You see this receiver turned on, and then this receiver just turned on, and you can see that by the button, or the LEDs lighting up as they turn on. So that is a full menu overview of the A10 receiver. Now we'll move over to the transmitters. So on the side of the transmitter, they have buttons on the side that you just squeeze inwards like this, and then it pops open. You have a bunch of information on the inside cover, serial number, FCC ID, the website and everything. Audio Limited is now owned by Sound Devices, so you see audiolimited.com at the bottom. This company is now Sound Devices. So if you ever need to service these units or anything like that, it will be Sound Devices that you are reaching out to, not Audio Limited. So inside of this unit, there is 2 batteries. Then there's this little thread that can pop the batteries out. This unit does hold on to AA batteries pretty tightly, so I recommend leaving this ribbon underneath the batteries. And then also the way that this unit is designed, this little plastic thing right here that holds the batteries in, they have to go in positive first. They slide in and under this plastic piece here, and then they just press down in here. And with this ribbon, it's very much preference, but I tend to like to put this top battery in first and make sure that ribbon is seated, and then just kind of push this ribbon down into place, and then stick the other battery in the same way. You push down on the back, and then you have your ribbon here. Under that is your red power button, so you're going to press that, and then the LEDs on the top of the unit will turn on, and then the unit will power on shortly after. And then, unlike Sennheiser units, they actually left the buttons on the outside, so once it's powered on, you can close the battery cover, give it a good squeeze so it snaps, and then just like the receiver, you have 3 buttons here that completely operate the whole unit. So your center button gets you into the menus. Your first option here is your frequencies. So hit that, and then it's the same thing as on the receiver. So the frequency that we had for our receiver here was 2210. So we're going to come over here. We're going to choose 22. Come over and choose. Come in the wrong direction. I'm going to choose 2210. We're going to hit back, and then you should see this LED turn green, and you'll see all of this information fill in here. So now we're going to go back to the receiver. We're going to and see how it's flashing like this. That means we're overloading the receiver. Even though we're on low RF power, we just need to back this a little further away, and it should start to like us a little bit more. We're only on 10 milliwatts of power, but still we're so close that it doesn't really like that we're so close. And see how we kind of, this is channel 2. So channel 1 here, we are fully set in with all of our settings, and we do have to maintain a little bit of distance here just to not overload the receiver. So now we're going to boom over to channel 2, and we're going to scan some frequencies here. We're going to scan our same group, and we should see our first transmitter, yep, right there at 2210. And now I see a little clean spot, like right there. So I'm going to try to come over. You kind of have to hit this a bunch. You can also come back like this, make it do a full thing, and then right as I get there, hit the button. And now I only have to move over just a little bit to get in that clean spot, which is 2119. So then we're going to hit set, and then we're going to come out. And then on our second receiver, our second transmitter, we're going to come over here. And same thing, we're going to power the unit on. Oh, this unit was already on. We're going to power it on. And then we are going to come over to our center button. Where's my focal plane? We're going to come over to our frequency. We're going to remember what frequency we set to, 2119. We're going to choose our subchannel and then go all the way up to 2119. And you might be wondering why I'm doing this manually. The one downside of this product is that unlike Lectrosonics and some other brands like Shure, this does not have an IR frequency matching port, doesn't have an IR sync port, so you do have to set these frequencies manually, which is why I like to prioritize TV channels so that it's simpler numbers to remember and you don't have to click through as far. So we're going to power this on, and then we're going to hit back, and then now we should see this come to life over here. And if you'll see this H in the top corner here, we are at high RF power. We are at 50 milliwatts of power, and we are very badly overloading our receiver. So we're going to go into our settings, and we are going to come over to RF power. We're going to change it to low, which is 10 milliwatts. And when we change that, we have stopped overloading our receiver. So now let's run through the rest of this menu system here. So as I mentioned, our first option is frequency, which is where you choose your channels. And then your next option is audio gain. So this is where you select how loud your audio signal actually is. You'll see this, and then it does give you a good meter here. I don't have a microphone plugged in right now, so let me do that. And for these units, the microphone cable is this locking 3-pin LEMO connection. And then on the top of the units, you have a 3-pin LEMO plug, and this microphone cable goes into that. And then it just, when it lines up, it just threads down on so that you are protecting the actual connector and you're threading it into the microphone, into the transmitter body. So I just smacked my boom with my lav here. So right here we have a Sanken COS11 in a Bumblebee concealer that, disgustingly enough, you can see very much needs to be cleaned. So when you're setting your gain, you do have a good meter here. So if I tap the microphone, we can see where we're getting our level. But if we want to up our gain, we can use these side buttons here, and it will change the gain. For talent lavs, I will typically do about 22, and that's usually a healthy level for like indoor speaking. That's pretty good. Excuse me, on these. 22 is a pretty good level for the COS11s on like a normal speaking talent that's just indoors. So then you hit the center button to come back, and then your next option is audio setup. You can set your low cut. You can choose what frequency it'll start to roll off at. I just do 80. Some people like to do this at the mixer level. I just do it at the transmitter level because I don't need these frequencies anyway, and it's just totally fine to roll them off. So you can hit the center button to select, and then you have your limiter. This limiter, I don't remember exactly correctly. I think it'll start to engage at -6 dB, and it's a really good limiter. These limiters in this system are very, very they're very nice. They sound very pleasant. You can barely ever hear them engage. They have a super soft knee, so they'll just treat your audio peaks very, very nicely. Great limiters in here. I trust them completely. Your next option is lav mic line. The nice thing about these transmitters is they're very, very versatile. That's why I bought them. You can choose to have your... it does detect that there is a lav connected, so it won't let you set anything else. The a cool feature about these transmitters is that they can detect what source is plugged into them, mainly by their power draw. So if I unplug this lav, we should get some options back. So I'll come back over here to our lav mic line, and now we have all our options here. We have a lav level, which is somewhere between 3 and 5 volts of power to power the lavs, and it is pretty good at like detecting what power level your lavs need. You have a normal mic level signal, so if you plug this into something like a Shure SM58 that is a mic level, but doesn't need to be powered like a lav, you can do that. It has a line level input, so you can use this for instruments or pretty much anything else that comes in at line level. You can do 48 volts of phantom, or you can do 12 volts of phantom. These are kind of the gold standard, or at least they were until the A20s came out, for boom transmitters. These were used on Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. The mixer of that used these on his booms. They sound like a cable. It's really hard to kind of perceive that a wireless system could sound as good as a hardline connection, but the digital transmission, the digital RF of these is so damn solid, and the preamplifiers in this transmitter are so good that it just sounds like a cable. There is a reason that Sound Devices bought this system. They made some really incredible products, and Sound Devices built their A20 and Astral line off of the success of these A10s. And I think the Astral system is some of the best wireless on the market. I know a lot of people are fans of Shure Axient. I think the A20 Astral goes toe-to-toe with Axient any day of the week. So that is how you select your levels, and then this is your mute button. So one of the nice things about this mute button here is you can choose whether it's on or off. So basically, if it's off, this pack will not be able to be muted at all. When it's on, it gives you the option to press these two buttons simultaneously and turn on the mute button. You have to press and hold them a little bit. So it'll totally do an audio mute of the transmitter, and then this red LED will flash to indicate that it's muted. I typically leave the mute button system off just because if talent leans back in a chair, or if their mic pack gets bumped or something, these buttons could get mashed, and then you have to go take the transmitter out of their Ursa strap and unmute them. So it's just a little bit annoying to have to deal with that. So I typically make sure that in my audio setup options, the mute button is off. So that way it can't get bumped. So moving on, you have record and transmit. These are US made units, so they are under the jurisdiction of the Zaxcom patent that does not allow them to record and transmit at the same time. When you are in lav mode, the only options you have are timecode. You can get a proprietary cable to jam timecode in here. So when these are recording, they are able to be jammed to timecode. It has an internal timecode and can be jammed externally. Your other option is frame rate, so that your timecode is at the correct frame rate. When you put your transmitter into boom mode, so if you go P48 and you come back to your record and timecode system, you are able to record and transmit at the same time. I know a lot of people in the States think that because of the Zaxcom patent, any wireless device is not able to transmit and record at any time. That is not true under patent law. The only devices that are not able to record and transmit at the same time are the language in the patent is body-worn transmitters, and when this is set to boom mode or P48, no actor is going to be wearing a 48-volt phantom lav unless somehow you want to give them a really bulky, old lav that is phantom powered. So when this is hanging on a boom pole, it can transmit and record at the same time. When you go into your TC record options, you get a record button. You get a file info button. If this would focus, please. So you can view the files on the card and the record length. You can see your time code. You can see your file name, time elapsed, so the amount of time that you recorded, the amount of time remaining on your card. And then you have your transmit record mode. So you can do transmit and record, or you can do record only. And I think if you set it to record only, and then come back to your audio setup and change it to lav mode, you're still able to... Oh no, it locks it out entirely. So I guess the patent information also disallows recording in general on body-worn transmitters, but change it to back to phantom power, and you come back here, you get all of your record options back, and then you have time code like we just saw, and frame rate like we just saw. And then you have your encryption again, so you have your key and everything like that. Like I said, I'm not an expert on digital encryption, so just letting you know where it is. And then after that, you have your settings. You have Bluetooth. I'll get back to that at the end. You have your RF power, which is selectable between low, medium, and high. 10, 20, and 50 milliwatts of power, respectively, in those options. You have your modulation, again, your standard versus long range. Has to be the same on the transmitter and receiver, otherwise they won't communicate with each other. You can choose your battery type. I use nickel metal hydrides. You can do lithium ion or alkalines. And then you have your user groups. Again, those have to be loaded through SD utility. I have not done that. Your other option is TV channel map, like we talked about. Region X, Y, or Z. Those again have to match, otherwise your frequencies won't match. This is your display options. So you can choose again the brightness of this display in a couple steps. You have your blue LED, which you can turn on or off. I usually leave it off just so it doesn't shine through Talent's clothes. And then your orientation. Because with the way that Sound Devices or Audio Limited designed this, they go on the boom pole upside down. They hang off of a bracket that holds this upside down. So when you flip it, you can read it normally. But when we're using it in lav mode, we typically will want it to be flipped normally so we can read it in an upright position. If we back out of our settings, we go into our system information. We have our sleep. You can set this to sleep, which means you can wake it up from the control app, but it doesn't turn it all the way off. It's just basically like a deep power saving mode, but still has the Bluetooth enabled, so you can wake it back up. The next is lock menu, so you can basically make it so that the only thing in the menu you're able to change is the lock versus unlock. Everything else is locked out of the menu so that if Talent bumps these buttons, nothing happens to the settings that you've so finely tuned. Next option is set date time. So this is where you can kind of set your internal time code, hour, minute, all that. This also applies to file metadata. This is a format card, so you can format the card that is in the unit. You can restore factory defaults, system information, serial number, firmware version, display version, and then your frequency band. This operates in the A band, so you get 470 to 548 megahertz. Then your last option is update. This just puts it in the mode to update the firmware. And so the last thing to show on this device is under the battery sled. If you turn off the unit and pop the batteries out, you will see that right in here in the middle is a micro SD card, which is where it will record everything that you want it to record. I currently have a 16 gigabyte card in here. That is usually good for recording all day. So if you have this on a boom pole, what I would personally recommend is jamming timecode in here and then just setting this to record pretty much all day so that you have an all-day roll of a backup file of your boom track. That way, if anything, in the unlikely situation that anything happens to your RF, you have a recorded backup on this SD card that will save you in post. All right, so the last thing that we're going to talk about before we close this out is the app that you can use to control the A10 transmitters. So these do have Bluetooth devices in them. So I'm going to click on one of my transmitters, and then in here I have all of these settings. So one of my transmitters is set to, this transmitter is set to boom mode, so it is able to record and transmit at the same time. I have a record button, I have my timecode readout, I have the device serial number, I have the frame rate. This icon right here will tell me if the device is awake or asleep. If the device is asleep, it will be a half moon. If it's awake, it's the sun. I have some battery telemetry here. I have my Bluetooth signal strength here. I have sleep, record. There's a 20 decibel pad. I can set the gain. I can set the low frequency cut. I can set the RF output power, and I can set the frequency down here. So this app really gives you a great ability to control the transmitters without having to get all up in your Talon's personal space or remove packs from anybody. This is really a great solution to be able to deal with a Talon's pack without disturbing them very much. With the new A20 series of systems, the Sound Devices Astral unit that's out now, they have an even better solution in the form of NextLink, basically where you can completely control the transmitter from the mixer level if you're using a Sound Devices 8 series mixer, or at the receiver level if you're using a different mixer. The NextLink is really great for controlling it. They also have gain forward, which allows the gain of the microphone to be set at the receiver level as opposed to the transmitter level. The A10 receiver is not able to do gain forward. However, the A10 transmitters are backwards compatible with the A20 receiver, which can do gain forward on the A10 transmitters. So if you're able to find some A10 transmitters for a good price, and then you want to pick up a brand new A20 receiver, you are able to do gain forward on the A10 transmitters with an A20 receiver. So very, very versatile system and very much worth investing in. And that about wraps up our demo of the audio limited A10 system. I highly recommend picking these up if you're looking to upgrade your wireless system from things like Sennheiser or DD Theos or anything like that. These are a truly revolutionary product, even though they're I think they're approaching 8 years old. They're really, really fantastic quality radio mics, and they are super versatile. They do so much. You can pick them up on the used market for a very reasonable price. I think if you buy them new, you're looking at about $7,000 for this whole system here. On the used market, I've seen as low as $2,500 for a set. I actually just purchased my second set of these for about $3,500, which is a smoking deal on these products. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will see if I can help people out with their audio limited systems. Thank you, and enjoy your radio mics.